This is the Johnny Cleveland Podcast, all things Cleveland sports, with your host, John Suchan. And good evening and welcome to the Johnny Cleveland Podcast, part of the Fanatical Elves Network. And we are joined by a great guest this evening. We have Bruce Hooley, longtime sports radio guy, writer. I grew up pretty much, have listened to Bruce for many years in the past because I'm a diehard Cleveland fan, Cleveland Browns fan. And we're just lucky to have Bruce here tonight. And thank you, Bruce, for joining our show this evening. How are you this two nights?
I'm doing great, John, and it's a pleasure to be on. You were a faithful listener of the Spielman and Hooley podcast back when Chris and I were on, and that's how we got to know each other. And it's been exciting for me to watch you grow your own brand and influence up in Northeast Ohio as it pertains to what was always topic one on my days at ESPN 850 WKNR, which is what is our Browns topic today. So looking forward to talking to you about the Browns and other things.
Yeah, well, thank you. Well, the Browns have had a very exciting weekend. Fans are still basking in glory. They pulled off a pretty big upset win over the San Francisco 49ers. They were a 10-point underdog at home, which probably ruffled a few feathers on the defensive side of the ball. And they played tremendously well again. And I just did an article for Fans First talking about that number one defense. What were your takeaways initially from the big win?
Well, I think, it's hard to win a game in the NFL. Spiels used to talk to me about that. Chris Spielman used to talk to me about that all the time. You'd have a team that's, one win a game against a team that's an elite NFL team. And he's talking to me about it's just hard to win a game in the NFL. And to count the Browns out because they had a bunch of injuries. I mean, it makes sense. You don't have Joel Bitonio. You don't have Nick Chubb. You don't have Deshaun Watson. You're down to your third quarterback. And Brock Purdy's never lost a regular season game. I get it, but you can't plan on Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey going out of the game.
True.
And you can't plan on the momentum you get from a home crowd like that. So a tremendous win by the Browns. And we can get into the belly aching and the qualifying that 49er fans want to get into about calls at the end or whatever. But the bottom line is you had a makeable field goal at the end to win the game. You didn't make it. That's on you, not on anybody else.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I was up there with my lovely wife, Laura Jean, and we were dodging raindrops at first, walked around beautiful Cleveland Browns Stadium for the rest of the game. And it was really one of those games where, you look at it, you look back at how it all progressed. I actually watched it on replay this afternoon again. And outside of that first drive, the 49ers went 84 yards. And they ended up with 215 yards for the game. And when we were leaving at the 2-minute warning, they only had 160 before they went on that last drive to try to kick that field goal. So that's 78 yards, I think, between the first drive and the last drive of the game. I mean, which is really just solid. I mean, that's why they are the number one defense. And there are stats along, if you start looking at it, they're number one in about 8 or 9 defensive categories.
Yeah, and to me also points out a truism in the NFL. Jim Schwartz is a phenomenal defensive coordinator. He was not a phenomenal head coach. And there are guys who are just tremendous at being coordinators or being position coaches that are not cut out for being a head coach because the skill set is really totally different. So first of all, the coordination of the defense, the plan of the defense under Jim Schwartz and the staff he's put together, he's maximizing the talent around him, and they have a lot of talent. They have a really good secondary. If you can shut people down with your secondary, and they have the talent to do that, and then you augment it with a pass rush and some of the smart offseason acquisitions that they've made. They have linebackers who can make plays. I mean, there's really nothing lacking in that defense. And coming out of that kind of a performance, whether Samuel and McCaffrey were limited or not, George Kittle wasn't limited. He had 1 catch for 1 yard. Nobody else I've seen has done that to him other than the Cleveland Browns.
That's true. Yeah, no, it, when you think about Jim Schwartz and, coming, and I didn't realize this stat until like Thursday. One of my colleagues, Elliot, was talking about I think it was Steve Gill, who was mentioning that Schwartz's record going into that game against Kyle Shanahan was 8-1 as either as a coach or a defensive coordinator. So like, even though we were, 10-point underdogs, that's pretty significant when you have a 7 or 8 win record against another coach. Obviously that other coach probably knows that, and there's a little bit of a mental side to that. And so I thought that was a big thing going into this game. Wasn't sure after that first drive that the 49ers put together, but man, they really just came to play. And the way that he's got the guys running downfield, I mean, running at the ball, it's very refreshing as a Browns fan.
Yeah, and here's the thing, like, obviously, everybody knows Kyle Shanahan's history in Cleveland, and I think those things can be way overblown. Like, none of the guys on this team have an axe to grind with Kyle Shanahan. But what it can do, given Kyle Shanahan's experience in Cleveland, is it can make Kyle Shanahan not react the way he typically would. I thought he coached that game so hoping to win and defend his honor, if you will, that he coached unlike Kyle Shanahan typically coaches. And I think he, instead of going for it on, with relying on the talent that he had at his disposal, he was, I thought, very, very conservative to his detriment. And he really, I mean, he was counting on an interception to get back in the football game. And I joked after the game, if you and your listeners remember, when Kyle Shanahan left Cleveland, he was under contract. And he had to essentially convince Jimmy Haslam why you should let me go. And he issued went in, Tony Grossi reported this at ESPN Cleveland. He went in with a so many point PowerPoint presentation. And I joked after the game on Twitter, like, is there going to be a PowerPoint presentation from Shanahan about, why he lost that game? Because I didn't think he coached like he typically could coach. Not taking anything away from the Browns. I'm just saying that, players make mistakes under duress. Coaches can too. And I think he really wanted to win that game, and it got to him in some way, form, or fashion.
Well, typically we're talking after a Browns game about our coach, Kevin Stefanski. I call him Old Steady Eddie. And, he got the win. And though there are still fans, I saw some radio programming today where fans are still calling for, Kevin to be fired. And after this huge win, where do you stand with Kevin? And, the fact that he's 4 years into this, which is pretty significant as a Browns fan and watching this team over the years, that he's still there. And, he's doing some good things. He's had a good track record. He was that longtime assistant in Minnesota. Where do you fall with Kevin? Do you think that he's the right guy moving forward?
Well, I mean, 4 years as a Browns head coach is like, what is that in dog years? Like, I mean, AWG years, like, we don't have 4-year coaches here very often. So
no,
I think he's been ill-served in his credit for the job he's done, in that he wasn't on the sidelines when they beat the Steelers in the playoffs. COVID took him off the sidelines. And I think people would look at him differently if he actually had been out there and
that visual,
masterminded that. But you can't take that away from Kevin Stefanski. Hello, folks. He won a playoff game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Okay, now that's not a lifetime achievement award that buys you forever. And I will say, I was a big supporter of Stefanski in the beginning. I liked what he did. I think he becomes a victim of his own creativity. There was a play earlier in the year where they handed it off on a reverse. The guy on the reverse handed it to another guy on a double reverse. He whips it back to Deshaun Watson on a lateral, and Deshaun Watson throws like a 6-yard pass.
Right.
And I'm like, if you want to make a 6-yard pass any more complicated than that, I don't know what you maybe snap it out of the single wing. But like when you run a play like that, play gets you 60 yards, not 6. I'm not putting the ball in the air 3 times, having a chance to fumble it. Those are the things I don't like about Kevin Stefanski.
Yeah.
Obviously, now we have to evaluate him differently this year, because when you don't have Nick Chubb and you don't have Joel Bitonio and you don't have Deshaun Watson, you got to cut the man a little bit of slack. I think it's ridiculous anybody says he should be fired. Of course, if they lose out, then that becomes a moot point. But I like a lot of what I see. I just am a firm believer, John, that football eventually comes down to, can you get 3rd and 1 and can you stop 3rd and 1? They can stop 3rd and 1.
Yeah.
My mystification sometimes is over how they choose to get 3rd and 1.
Yes.
Rather than relying on just basic football power and instincts and talent, which I think they have enough of to just get 3rd and 1 the old-fashioned way.
Well, now they did it the unconventional way with their first touchdown the other day on 3rd and 1, I believe, and they put Harrison Bryant back there, and it was really a beautifully crafted, and it worked, tackling down the field, and Kareem got the touchdown that kind of opened the scoring for the Browns and got them back in that game. Which at the time you were thinking, gosh, that they were down 10-0. That really kind of gave them a boost going in the halftime. Our kicking, it's nice to have Dustin Hopkins, an actual kicker that can make most of his kicks. I think he missed initially a 40 or 50 yarder or something like that. I still think it was in, though. I looked at the replay today, and it seemed like it curved around. Anyway,
don't get Cleveland Browns fans started on
no. Let's not talk about going back
good
to
or bad or not good or bad.
1986, 1987. That was just a shame. I'm still dreading that. I was at the Jets game, that double overtime game, but then I didn't get to the Denver game, and I crushed. But
well, then it's your fault, John. You should have been there.
I know. Well, my wife won the game for us this weekend because she came to the game, and she was shivering cold, but we got the win. So so she's our good luck charm. So the Browns now, this defense, what are your thoughts on this defense? Because a lot of us have been talking about just how, they're leading the league in they're number one with a passing attempts, the fewest passing attempts. They have, they're number one in only giving up 51% of pass completions. The Broncos are giving up 76% on pass completions.
Well, that's a tough way to live.
They've only given up some 51 first downs total, which is like significantly more better than anybody else in the league. Now they've played 5 games. Some teams have played 6, but what do you think about this defense?
Well, I said before, I think they're good at all 3 levels. I think they're good at everything they do. First of all, they can cover you man to man. They got to keep Denzel Ward healthy. Denzel Ward's missed almost an entire regular season of games, and when they drafted him out of Ohio in his career, and when they drafted him out of Ohio State, you remember the debate was Bradley Chubb or Denzel Ward.
Yeah.
And I said at the time I'd take the pass rusher 100 times out of 100 over a corner because the corner is going to lose his speed, but a pass rusher is going to get craftier. And you see old pass rushers, you see, Dwight Freeney, and you see guys making coin and sacking quarterbacks late in their career. Now Bradley Chubb's had some injuries. And when Denzel Ward is healthy, he's phenomenal. But he's not healthy enough. So they got to keep him healthy. They've got Greg Newsome. They've drafted well in the secondary. Yeah. They hit. They're nasty. What would you add to this defense? I mean, who wouldn't want an absolute like head knocker at linebacker? But I think they have linebackers who make plays. Owusu Koromo was a good pick, and then obviously everything starts with Myles Garrett and their ability to exert pressure on the quarterback. Because the reason why their percentage rate is so low is because you don't want to throw on them, because you don't want to lose 8-10 yards, and they have the capacity across the front line to put you in a down and distance situation that's going to guarantee you punt the ball or maybe turn the ball over. So again, Schwartz has done a tremendous job coordinating the defense. He's got weapons. He employs his defensive weapons in a smart, savvy way. So there's a lot to love about that Browns defense.
It's so interesting because, we've had Joe Woods there, and we had a lot of the same personnel, and just that changing of the schemes and how they attack the ball and they read their opponent on when they're on defense is just really, really spectacular right now. We'll see what happens. I'm sure there'll be some variables. Next week, they're going to play the Indianapolis Colts out there in Indy. So we can talk about that here maybe in a little bit. But what are your, we had PJ Walker from Temple University, that juggernaut of quarterbacks. And Journeyman has played in a variety of teams. He actually beat Tom Brady last year when he was playing for Carolina, which is, pretty impressive, I think, even though, so he comes in and he does the job. He threw a couple interceptions. He may start. The next thing we're looking at is Deshaun Watson. We've been kind of, coming into this game or this last game, it's just been odd, strange. We didn't even know Deshaun was injured till, coming off that loss to or the win against Tennessee. And now we were sitting around, we've been waiting, and he's still not playing. PJ Walker came in and did an admirable job. I guess what's your take on the whole, I guess first off, the quarterback situation in Cleveland right now as it is, and then I thought we'd get into a little bit of the Sean chatter long term. But what are your thoughts right now with, they threw DTR out there. He was our rookie, and then, that didn't work out. So where are you at with all of that?
Well, I was not a fan of DTR. Watched him in college, wasn't a fan of him. And so, PJ Walker, you get the win against the 49ers. I mean, that's pretty hard to impeach that win.
Yeah.
What I would say about, Deshaun Watson, I mean, that's a long conversation that I'd love to have with you, because I understand why they did it. I just think that it's something that I had doubts about when they did it. And I know you got a guy of that talent and ability, but when you sit out a year in the NFL and then you add on top of it the reasons why you sat out that year, I think it was somewhat of a fool's errand to think that he could come back and just seamlessly pick up. And if I could draw a parallel, Tiger Woods went through his own sort of proclivities from a sexual perspective. And the reason why I think that affected Tiger so much is when you got an alpha who is supremely confident when he walks into the room because he knows everybody else in that room is impressed by the fact that you are who you are. And I said with the Tiger Woods situation, where he went on this long lag of winning a major, the difference in Tiger Woods was not because of the behavior that he engaged in that people found out about. The difference was that back before people knew about that, when Tiger Woods walked into the room, people would say, whoa, there's Tiger Woods. And after they learned about some of the embarrassing details of his life, when Tiger Woods walked into the room, he thought they were saying, there's Tiger Woods.
Right.
And I wonder how much of that is a part of Deshaun Watson.
Yeah.
Because my first exposure to Deshaun Watson was when he was playing for Clemson. I was covering Ohio State for Sports Illustrated.
Yeah.
Playing in the college football playoff. And you could not get a player ever that I covered in 18 years at the Plain Dealer and beyond that at other places who was more highly thought of and respected by his coaches and his teammates than Deshaun Watson. And so when this happened with all the allegations, it just didn't fit in character. And I'm making no assessment about his guilt or innocence, but I can make an assessment about what that must do to a person who has grown up with tremendous and enormous and universal respect, now being questioned for the character, integrity, values, and things like that previously were the reason why he was respected. And when those vanish, I think that does something to any man, whether they're a professional athlete or not.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think I've heard you talk about that angle before, and it is really something. I mean, I guess right now with do you think, like, I mean, physically right now with the shoulder, it sounds like there's something going on there, but I mean, the perception out there was that he was ready to go. We saw him warming up for the Baltimore game, and then magically now he kind of disappeared. Now he's on the sideline. I saw him yesterday, or the game on Sunday, but it's just so, because Cleveland fans are very used to quarterbacks that have shoulder injuries. And we just saw one that left or got traded in Baker. And so, but he grinded it out and probably really, I don't know. I mean, hurt our chances probably in some opportunities that he had there. So, I guess that's where are you at with all that stuff?
Well, I mean, Baker Mayfield was always going to be a tough guy to love in Cleveland because you could have had Josh Allen and you didn't take him. And John Dorsey supposedly loved Josh Allen. Now, that's not fair to Baker Mayfield because he didn't make him take him. I liked a lot of things about Baker. What I never liked about Baker and what I always thought would undo Baker is this stuff when he makes a big play. Like, as a quarterback, you don't have to be flatline, but you have to be focused. You aren't an emotional being out there. You have to hold up when things around you are going, askew. And I didn't see that kind of focus and maturity in him and some of the other just off-field stuff that I'm like, you don't see Tom Brady doing that. And I know Brady's the exception, but you don't see really good NFL quarterbacks spending their time. And this was my assessment of Baker. He spends way too much time invested in things that have nothing to do with winning, like carrying on a feud with Colin Cowherd. Like, do you see other quarterbacks do that? I don't. Now, it doesn't surprise me that Baker, is delivered in Tampa because Baker is a chip on the shoulder guy.
Yeah.
He won the Heisman Trophy, but he viewed himself, because I guess he needs some kind of psychological boost out of, I'm also the guy who's a walk-on at Texas Tech, and I had to transfer to Oklahoma, and nobody likes me, and nobody respects me. Well, if you won the Heisman and you're the number one pick, somebody likes you, and somebody respects you. It reminds me of Draymond Green being able to recite every single player in the NBA draft who's ever taken in front of him. And I'm like, dude.
I'm not a Draymond Green fan. I really loathe him.
Nor am I. But it's like, at some point, you have to say, I've arrived. And because I've arrived, there are things expected of me that belie the kind of guy I have invented myself or lied to myself that I am. And I thought Baker just never took the reins of, I'm the franchise quarterback of a franchise quarterback starved franchise. It is an honor to be here, and I'm going to win for these people, and I'm going to do what I have to do to win for these people rather than get sidetracked by my own little personal battles of animus.
Yes. Yeah. Well, now he's down in Tampa, and he started off good, kind of hit a snag there this week. They played the hot flying Detroit Lions, which
love my Lions.
You're probably I've actually become kind of a fan, not just because Chris Spielman's there now, but also my son Alec, who's up in Grand Rapids. He's kind of become a Lions fan. He actually went to a game 2 weekends ago. So how is Chris doing up there with what's the latest? His role with the team up there. What is that? What's his title?
I'm not sure what his title is, but there are only two people in the organization who have more title than him. He's a guy that they recruited to be their GM.
Yeah.
He was very smart in recognizing that GM was not the perfect fit for him for myriad reasons. But they wanted him so bad to be a part of their organization, and why not? Here's a guy who, in the Lions Ring of Honor, beloved, great player, wants to see him win. Oh, by the way, because of his amazing sacrifice and courage and teaming with his late wife, Stephanie, to start the Stephanie Spielman Fund for Breast Cancer Research, here's a guy who can sit across the table from a billionaire and ask him for money for whether it's a sports franchise or research reasons, and he's perfectly comfortable doing that. Here's a guy who'll go into the draft room and look at a film and say, no, this guy doesn't love the game. He's playing for the money or whatever. He's got the expertise to understand that. He was passed over in the first round of the draft, and it fueled him for, the remainder of his career. He can identify with the underdog. He's a 4-time Pro Bowler. He can identify with the overdog. You want a guy like that in the building, not to be chained to his desk. You want him to be able to go into the weight room, talk to guys. You want him to be able to go out on the field and coach a rookie. You want him to be able to watch tape with a GM and a head coach and have the credibility to be able to offer input that they might not. So he's a home run hire for the Detroit Lions.
Oh, sure.
And you see in the way the Lions are going and the way they've resurrected the career of Jared Goff and the way they've drafted, they're a team on the come.
No, I agree. I'm a little disappointed that he's not co-hosting your We Tackle Life podcast, which I adored all those times. So, the one thing I always appreciate about you guys, and you mentioned it a little at the beginning, but when listeners like myself would email the show, or there was something that was going on at some point. There was a funny story that Chris had some situation with his wife. And I think I commented on it in an email, and that you and him actually brought that up during one of your shows. I thought that was really cool. So thank you.
Sure. We love to have fun, and we did have fun, and it introduced me to a new format. And, now given my recent medical diagnosis, the We Tackle Life podcast is back at his order. I mean, at his order, when I called him, because it was only fair that he find out about my cancer diagnosis from me and right away. And his response was a classic reflection of our friendship, which is not to say, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry, which would have been my reaction for any friend. But his first words out of his mouth were, I'm excited for you. You were built for this. Yes. And I knew he wasn't like, hey, dude, you're really sick and you might, be horribly ill and nauseous during your chemo treatments and whatever.
Yeah.
But he instantly followed that by saying, you have to blog about this. You have to use your gifts and talents of communication to inspire other people. And I
Yeah.
certainly had a great template with he and Stephanie. So yeah, it's
Well,
that's why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Let's break real quick. It will take a pause here on the Johnny Cleveland podcast, part of Fans First Sports Network and the Fanatical Elves. And we'll be right back. We're going to talk a little bit more about that, Bruce. I'd like to hear a little bit more of that. So we're going to break. We'll be right back. Okay, we're back on the Johnny Cleveland podcast. They insert those commercials later on, Bruce. So yeah.
Yeah.
So
I don't have TV commercials on my podcast, John.
Yeah,
so explaining how the real world works in a successful podcast.
I wanted to, before we get into kind of what's been going on with you lately, part of the reason Bruce, you've written for the Plain Dealer, like you mentioned, sports writing. I think that's really honestly where I remember reading some of your stuff from the Plain Dealer when I was younger. And then what I remember the most, and you reminded me that you were on the ESPN Cleveland Sports 850 from 2011 to 2016.
Mm-hmm.
And what I remember, I was telling you, is that I was living in Wichita all those years, and I'd go on my 2 or 3 mile walk, and there was this dirt road back there. And I always remember, I think you came on like at 3:00 or so, or you were in that early part. And then Emmett Golden came on, and I think you guys combined the show for a little bit. And there was a time period where you were, you live here in Columbus, but you were doing the show from Columbus. But I just appreciate the fact, I want you to know, and I've said this before off the air, but you really helped me through many days in going back and listening to your sports stories, because even then you would talk about sports, but you would bring it back to some other sort of thing in life or something. And I thought your perception on that was always registered with me. So thank you.
Well, that's the most gratifying thing that I can hear, is that, we didn't just entertain you, but we hopefully engaged you. I've always felt like I didn't want to just be a guy giving scores. I wanted to be a guy giving perspective, and I'm not shy about occasionally applying life perspective. You have to pick your battles, and you have to know that you're there to talk sports. But, there were openings, and I really appreciated Craig Karmazin, Keith Williams, Sam Pines, the leadership at ESPN Cleveland, that they were always willing to let you be you. I think that was the strength of the station in that day, that, obviously Aaron and Tony continue to get it done in the morning on the really big show.
Right.
They allowed what was the original show, The Hooligans, to be what it was. 3D with Will Burge and Gerard Cherry, and Emmett was a great show. Rega and Rhoda was a great show. A lot of tremendously talented people. Mark Bishop.
Where did he have a show on the same? He was with you in a show?
Mark was pre Mike and Mike. Mark would have a show from, I think, 4:30 a.m. to 6 a.m. And nobody brings the energy like Mark Munch Bishop.
No.
And so we had a really robust, talented staff. And I thought we did a great job offering people different kinds of commentary, different kinds of entertainment on the same subject matter, which is really not an easy thing to do.
That's what we like to do here on the Fanatical Elves Network. We've got a great group of contributors, Steve Gill and Joel Cade, the left guard, and Elliot and Rod Bloom. They all kind of bring a different take on the shows. We actually got a young kid named Sam who lives down there in Dallas, Texas. He's a young rising podcaster, loves the Browns, and he has the Browns Breakdown show, which is really cool.
You haven't had an intervention with him? He's a young kid that loves the Browns.
Yeah, I know. Like, dude, but he lives there in Dallas. So he hears all these stories about, the Cowboys, and, Cowboy fans aren't, loyal like us. I mean, we're Browns fans. We're hardier.
I used to joke, John, I was actually telling this to my wife today. I forget what context it came up in. But we got to the point where on the show one day, we noticed that every caller would preface their comment with a sentence that sort of established their credibility to weigh in on the topic. And the sentence was, hi, my name's Bill. I've been a Browns fan all my life.
Yes.
And it started to land on us like the guy who gets up at the AA meeting. Hi, my name is Fred, and I'm a drug addict. You have to admit your weakness. And so we got to the point where everybody'd call in and would say, hey, my name is Bill, and I've been a Browns fan all my life. We'd respond like they do at an AA meeting. Hi, Bill,
Yeah.
because we've all been through it with
Right.
Coddlegate and everything. So we
We
all
called it the
identify with what that
we
means.
we called it that when I was in Wichita, I was the Browns backers president of the Oz chapter, and we had what we call the Dirty Dozen, which was a group of old timers who have sat around the main table at the bar, and there were 13 of us, and so they call themselves the Dirty Dozen, and I mean they just
Even that's got
it's
a painful Browns past to it with
right,
Jim Brown.
right. That's true. That's true. So Bruce, you're doing a lot these days, and I know you've just come. You mentioned earlier that you had a tumor that was removed in recent times, and when I saw that, I'm not sorry, but I know you said Chris was, but I also I mean I am sorry, but I know that you are doing so many things right now, and including running for school board behind you. We can see if you're watching this on YouTube or the X, you'll see some of Bruce's signs there. But I just wanted to kind of open the floor to you to kind of share kind of what has happened recently and what your next steps are and where things are at with that. And I think what you said before the break with Chris and that connection, I just find that really interesting because after listening to you for years in the podcast or the radio, you are a good person to go forward and help.
Well, thank you, John. I appreciate that. And my life was transformed by the courage that I saw up close and personal with Chris and Stephanie. Chris and I happened to be partners on a radio in Columbus at the Fan at the time Stephanie's
Right.
battle was ending. And I remember very distinctly the day he came in and gave us the prognosis that was more dire than any previously. And I said, "What can I do?" And his response was, "We start the book tomorrow." And so for every day, for 5 days a week before our normal show from noon to 2, we would meet in our office for an hour and we would just talk about their life together. And so many of those things that Stephanie said that were her approach to fighting cancer have come back to me seamlessly without me going back and reading the book that I wrote and that we published in 2011. And so, I believe strongly that our life experiences prepare us for tougher life experiences that come. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to run for school board. I do a lot of sports writing now for an endeavor called PressProsMagazine.com. Our friends at Kirtland, I'm sure, know about PressProsMagazine.com because they have a history with one of the teams that we cover, Marion Local, that they played in the state title game last year in Canton. So I'm passionate about leadership. I'm passionate about young people, and sports is a really important part of our world because not the trophies you win, but the abilities you develop. And I'm not talking about dribbling a basketball or throwing a football. I'm talking about what do you do in sports? You practice something every day to ingrain incremental improvement so that down the road you're a different performer than you were in the beginning. That's true of a guitar player, of a piano player. That's true of the arts. That's true of any endeavor that requires discipline. I think discipline is a value in our country that has great use. I think the recognition of delayed gratification has great use. I think that, faith and trust in teammates, the collective being more important than the individual. I think all these are values that have served our country well, and hopefully that we can use to serve our country well in the future. And so my desire to run for my local school board is to do whatever I can do to raise the capacity of young people in our district, to help them be successful, to help them be independent thinkers, to help them be able to handle the adversity that they come. And you can't just throw them out there and let them sink. You've got to shepherd them through those experiences. You've got to provide them good coaching, if you will. You've got to express confidence in them. You've got to do all these things that tell the young person, I believe in you, but I'm not going to rescue you because you're capable of doing this yourself. And I think sports, John, is the personification of those things. And that's why I guess I've always been drawn to what maybe many people might look at as a grinder like Chris Spielman, not tall enough, not fast enough, whatever. But what you never questioned with Chris, and we can think of Browns players, Cavs players, Indians players, is their effort, their dedication, their focus. And those are the people whose success I enjoy the most. And I'm just trying to bring that down to a level where I can communicate it to young people. And if this cancer battle is a way for me to show that I don't live in fear, that I understand, who's in charge of my future and that I've settled that issue. If people want that message from me in great detail, they can find it at brucehooley.com, where I'm a lot more plain spoken about those things. This is not the
Yes.
format for that, but I would be honored if people would read my content at
Yeah.
brucehooley.com. And
I've
that is my true passion in life. But I see a way for that vein of passion in my life to infiltrate and affect other things that I'm doing. And I will honestly tell you this, and I really appreciate your compassion and saying you're sorry. I would be sorry if this were your diagnosis. I would be sorry if this were any friend's diagnosis,
Sure.
because I know it's a debilitating thing for people to hear: brain tumor, brain cancer, all that. I've had like about 15 bad minutes of worrying about what might happen with side effects from treatment and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm single-minded, and this is my takeaway. This has been the most exhilarating month of my life, because
Yeah.
while some people would say, "Oh, poor you, you have this," I feel more alive than I've ever felt, and it's, I think, something you can only experience if you're in the midst of something like this.
Absolutely. Yeah. Your life experiences, even, I mean, we all have, though, like you've said, and we've all had it, it's that story, and you've added a kind of you're in another chapter of that book. And, I'm a school counselor by day. And I'm over in Licking Heights now. And,
Okay.
I've had an opportunity to be in a lot of different types of school districts. And so, it's been a lifelong sort of journey for me in education and working with students and families and parents in the community. So that's kind of where I sit and where I kind of see that. But I'm excited to see how that all goes for you. When is the upcoming election and stuff with your Jonathan? It's Alder, right?
Jonathan Alder. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
the school district just outside Dublin. We are a
Yeah.
district growing like by leaps and bounds. We have 5 housing developments currently under construction, a
Oh,
660
wow.
development, because Dublin's built out, Hilliard's built out, Columbus is built out. Where
Right.
can we go and get a bigger house for $400,000-$500,000? It's Plain City, which is Plain City Jonathan Alder. We have
Yeah.
one school. I remember when I came to Columbus in 1988, the Olentangy School District had one school. Now they got 4.
Really?
They're the largest district, or fourth largest district in the state of
They
Ohio.
are. Yeah.
So, I see some things they've done that I don't want to do here, and I'll do
Right.
everything I can to
I never
stop it.
thought I never thought I would end up in Columbus. When I grew up in Worcester up north, and I always thought, okay, well, I end up in Cleveland. I lived out there in Kansas, came back, and now Columbus is just, I mean, when I was a kid growing up, it was always, I didn't want to go to Cleveland. I never wanted to come down to Columbus. I mean, the Buckeyes were down here, but that was about it. And now
Yeah.
Columbus has just become this huge metropolitan area, just growing, like you said, by leaps and bounds. Even on our side of town,
Yep.
I'm over in the New Albany, Gahanna area, and I'm over at Licking Heights. We're blowing up too. I mean, we're just expanding, and
Well, something tells me Intel and Google coming to town is not going to
just a
retard
little
that
bit. Yeah, I know. It's um I know you also work at 98.9, and what are some things that you're looking to, I mean, in the future? You've got this blog at brucehooley.com. I know I've checked that out. It's really awesome. Some other, what are your future endeavors right now looking like?
Well, I think, first of all, I've understood in the past week from conferring with 3 different doctors that are caring for me, is that this is a very serious situation, and that it's going to take a lot out of me to go through treatment, and that I need to be a little bit selfish and focus on the rest and the recovery. I mean, I do have 3 daughters and a wife that I dearly love, and as much as I would love to develop a career in speaking and some of the other things, the leadership issues that we've talked about, A, I have to be here to do that, and B, I want the people that I love the most that and lend the most enrichment to my life to see me fighting as hard as I can fight. I do not have a dire diagnosis for my life expectancy. I've said from the very beginning, since this matter occurred, on my birthday with a seizure at work, first time I ever had any kind of a medical episode at all, no warning at all. 2 hours later, I was told, dude, you have a brain tumor and you can't leave the hospital until we take it out. It was not just a tumor, it was a big one. And
Right.
that's okay, because this is the kind of cancer that does not spread through your body. I don't
Okay.
have to worry about it getting into my spinal fluid and into my, other organs like breast cancer often does.
Yes.
Mine is a grade 3 tumor. It is confined to my brain. It will always be confined to my brain, but like all cancers, it's unpredictable when it grows. So we're doing everything we can to take out surgically what was there, and then we're going to do everything we can to eradicate the rest of it with some traditional therapy and some very untraditional therapy. I've done a lot of research. I'm a meticulous person, I think. We've done a lot of research, and I'm attacking it a bunch of different ways that I feel good about. So we'll go from there. But my takeaway was I'm not I'm more concerned with my life's potency than I am my life's expectancy.
Yeah.
Because you can make a difference every day, and I'm dedicated to doing that. And part of that is accepting opportunities like this to get the chance to tell people about my situation and about whatever your situation is. Plow through it. There can be good come from it.
Well, we'd love to have you back on the show, and we love the part of the Fanatical Elves. Love you. You probably like meeting some of the other guys. We have a show on Thursday nights called the Fanatical Elves Show, and usually Steve and Joel and Elliot come on that show, and so I'm sure that it would be a treat to have you on sometime for that. So if people want to follow you along, we're going to follow you at brucehooley.com. Where else can we find you? Because I know I follow you a little bit on your Facebook page there.
Every blog that I write on brucehooley.com, and you and I were talking off air before we got on, is I don't have a problem generating content. I have a problem distributing content.
Yes.
And so I can't afford a webmaster, full-time expert webmaster to come up with the most amazing website. I'm learning on the fly. YouTube channel, Rumble channel, obviously Twitter is at @bhools. So we're trying to get the content out. And if you go to my blog, brucehooley.com, there's a lot of stuff aggregated there from the Spielman years. The blog itself about cancer is going to be over on, if it's a desktop version, it's going to be over on the right-hand side under the More tab. There'll be a Spielman and Hooley drop down. There'll be a blog tab. If you read the blog, at the bottom of the blogs now, there will be a link to all my social channels. There will be a Twitter name. There will be an email. There will be speaking. You can get a hold of me to speak. There will be the Rumble channel. There will be the YouTube channel and LinkedIn. And I'm trying to post kind of different content on each format. I'm not, LinkedIn is more like leadership stuff. The We Tackle Life podcast is more, it's not a sports results oriented podcast. It's a sports with leadership in the headlines. What does this situation tell us about leadership? So, and I'm open to suggestions. If people have suggestions on how to better distribute the content, my email is pretty simple. It's brucehooley@gmail.com. brucehooley@gmail.com. No dots or dashes. If anybody wants to reach out to me that way, it'd be great to hear from fans in Northeast.
You've always responded back. So I've said it for many years. So that's always, I talking to Laura, my wife, the other day, and I told her you're going to be coming on the show, and she knew how much I enjoy having listened to you over the years. So Bruce, I want to thank you again for coming on this evening and just sharing out. And I love to hear your perspective, and good luck with everything, including your election. When is the election? When does that happen?
November the 7th is the election for school board.
It's coming up.
Yes,
November
sir.
7th. All right. Well, thanks again for joining the Johnny Cleveland podcast. Final thoughts? Anything you'd like to share out before we leave?
No, I just have had a long history professionally in Northeast Ohio, 18 years at the Plain Dealer and 5 at ESPN Cleveland. I love not just Cleveland, but I love the Canton, Akron area. I love the Amish country area. I think the values in that area.
Holmes County.
Worcester, absolutely love Worcester and Kidron and Riceland and all those little towns down there. Shout out to
what's that store that you've mentioned that many times over the years? That's what I always got. Yeah, what is that?
My friends at Layman's Hardware, LEHMANS.com. Yeah, exactly. I was talking to Glenda the other day, and she's a cancer survivor as well. She's an inspiration to me. So I love Northeast Ohio. I feel like it's had kind of a hold on my heart and my career for the bulk of my time as a professional. And so it's always great to be able to reinforce those relationships. And I just appreciate very much the privilege to come on.
Well, thank you, Bruce. I appreciate you being here. This is good. This has been fantastic. So thank you again. Look forward to speaking to you soon. And I'm going to say, like I end our show all the time by reminding our fans here on the Fanatical Elves Network and the Johnny Cleveland podcast to remember to keep smiling. Take care, everybody.